Oh, I forgot the countdown. Perfect. Hello and welcome Inside Fever Insider Live. Brian Haenchen, Chloe Peterson here with you. We're finally almost to basketball season, Chloe. Training camp starts on Sunday. We're through the off season. How are you feeling?
I mean, it's been, 14 days since the expansion draft happened. So it feels like 2 days and like a year all in the same.
It went by expectedly fast. I'm sure for you it probably felt about as chaotic as you expected it to be.
Yeah, about so.
Real quickly, for those of you watching, obviously on the new home IndyStar TV Fever, this is where Chloe and I will be doing all of our live shows moving forward. We'll have interviews, practice footage, post-game conferences, anything and everything you can ask for, plus whatever else her and I come up with right here on this channel. So make sure that you subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and drop us a like on this video. These are all things that help us get into the YouTube algorithm, I think. And then for our bosses, it always looks good for us numbers-wise. And the sooner we can get to monetization level, the better. 1,000 subscribers is the magic mark. So maybe we'll do something special, like a shout out for the 1,000th subscriber. I think that would be wonderful. Chloe, let's start big picture with the offseason, and let's just focus on the Fever to start. General thoughts on the approach. If you have any grades that you want to offer, analysis, I'll just let you take it away from there.
You're putting grades on the spot on me, but I mean, I think this offseason went about as expected for the Fever. They obviously re-signed their core players, Kelsey Mitchell back on the 1.4 million Supermax. Lexie Hull is back on, I think, $765 contract. Sophie Cunningham is back. Damiris Dantas is back. So that's about what I expected of the Fever and kind of teams in general this offseason. Because the thought around the league was that a lot of players were going to go to what's familiar in a way, because obviously they had a week of free agency essentially before packing up their lives and potentially moving across the country. So I think a lot of players returned to what was familiar. Obviously, you had some big moves. Obviously, Satou Sabally went to the New York Liberty. Alana Smith went to the Dallas Wings. Nneka Ogwumike went to the Sparks, but I don't know if I count that because she spent 12 years with the Sparks before she went to Seattle and then came back. But
Angel Reese got traded.
Yeah, Angel Reese got traded, yeah. So there was a lot of movement still. I think not as much as there would have been if they had agreed to the CBA in like February and they had a regular, full off-season free agency period. But I think it went about as I expected for the Fever.
One other signing too. I'm pulling up the tracker and getting caught up because it's easy to lose them all. But you also had Skylar Diggins, the South Bend native, going over to Chicago, a little bit closer to home for her as well. Were there any teams, Chloe, and this is on a tangent that just kind of came to mind as we were talking, but were there any teams that you were surprised that they went one direction or the other, be it like a Minnesota, which wasn't able to keep as many players and kind of lost some people to, contracts elsewhere like Smith, or was this about kind of what you expected certain teams to do based on the salary cap and the players that they had to re-sign?
And I was kind of surprised about Minnesota with how many players they lost, but also with how good everybody was on Minnesota. Yeah. All of them were due for, a big bump in pay, and obviously Minnesota could not afford that. What I am kind of surprised about is how the New York Liberty managed to keep all of their main people and add Satou Sabally and managed to afford all of it, because they have Sabrina Ionescu, Breanne Stewart, Jonquel Jones, Satou Sabally, and they're going to have to fill out their roster with everybody else as well. And the New York Liberty are able to convince players like Satou, who took, it was like $815,000 to take a significant pay cut because she could have gotten the max somewhere else. So that was my surprise. I also think Toronto did maybe better than I expected in free agency, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that they hired Sandy Brondello, obviously a very well-respected coach from the players' side. And I think that the fact that Sandy Brondello is running that team running that franchise kind of takes away the uncertainty that goes with signing with an expansion team that obviously doesn't have any history. So it's obviously people or players trust Sandy Brondello. So
I realized it's mid-season form for me. I forgot to mention that our guest friend of the show, Tony East, will be with us here in about 8 minutes or so. And Chloe, let's talk about the training camp contracts real quickly. Basically, they're on the team, practicing with the team. They're kind of like the emergency reserves, correct?
Not necessarily. That's I think you're referring to the player development contracts.
Yes.
The training camp contracts, they have been around for forever. They basically are minimum non-guaranteed contracts, and they kind of most of the time are just like, if they're announced as a training camp contract, I would say most of the time they have a smaller chance of making the team. So Megan McConnell, she appeared in one game for Phoenix last year, got a really bad knee injury, and was out for the rest of the year. She's back now, obviously. Sister of TJ McConnell, Pacers guard. And then Kiana Traylor, she appeared, I believe it was in 2023 in some games. Then she's been overseas coming back. But training camp contracts are essentially to give, your roster some run in training camp. Obviously, the players can make the team. It's happened before. It's not uncommon, obviously. But they're usually the least likely to make it. And technically also Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, who the Fever signed earlier this week, she is technically coming on a training camp contract. But basically a training camp contract means, it's at the minimum salary, which is $277,500 this year. And it's not guaranteed. And it only hits the cap when they make the opening day roster. But so there's a difference in, the Fever announced Shatori Walker-Kimbrough as a signing, not a training camp contract. They announced Megan McConnell, Kiana Traylor as training camp contracts. So I think the designation the team makes is more important than how it shows up in the transaction log.
Yeah. Looking at the UFAs right here, talked about Walker-Kimbrough, Hines, Allen, Billings, and then Ty Harris, another Indianapolis native, all among the UFA signings. Same basic question, Chloe. Surprises, thoughts on these four?
I think Mo Billings is first off, she's a good pickup for the Fever. She played with Kelsey Mitchell and Unrivaled on Hive BC this past season. She played with Caitlin Clark and Team USA, and she seemed to have a lot of good chemistry with both of them. And I think that's kind of what the Fever were going for this year, especially in the condensed free agency period. They just wanted to make sure these players were going to fit together, and they were going to obviously be able to work together pretty easily, because usually in a regular free agency offseason, players sign in February, and then they can come to the city they sign at and they can work out for 2 months, but before training camp starts. But this season, obviously, you have a week, if that. And for players like the signings they had, Mo Billings is coming from Golden State, Maisha Hines-Allen coming from Dallas, Ty Harris coming from Dallas, even though I guess Ty Harris is from here, so she probably doesn't have to move. But they are probably spending this week, or at least part of this week, packing up their stuff and moving. So they don't have as much time to kind of develop that chemistry compared to regular seasons. So fit, or early fit, quick fit was very important, I think, this season specifically.
Ty Harris also played with the Connecticut Sun there for a minute. She's coming off an injury with Dallas, limited to 5 games last season. Real quickly, Chloe, we have a couple minutes here before bringing on Tony. Just the draft. Raven Johnson, that was a pick that you thought made sense going into the draft. That's one that comes to fruition. You also have Pistot, was it Justine Pistot, who they just announced they signed to a deal, who's led the SEC in 3-point shooting, which is pretty remarkable. And then obviously Timmons from Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I said it last week before the draft, I think Raven Johnson is a great pick for the Fever. And I know a lot of people I saw mentioned on social media, why would you use the number 10 pick for a backup? And the thing is, any pick the Fever made at number 10 was going to be a backup because they obviously have Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and then Lexie Huller, Sophie Cunningham at the 3, Mo Billings at the 4, Aliyah Boston at the 5. So nobody they picked was going to come in and start right away. And I think Raven Johnson is a great pick as that player who can come in and give them just like really good minutes, especially defensively in those, end of game defensive sets where they just need to defend for 20 seconds to win the game, or like when they need like a jolt on defense sometime during a game. And something Stephanie White mentioned too is, Raven Johnson primarily plays the 1. That's, what she is good at. But, Ty Harris, who they signed obviously last week, she is a point guard, but she can also, play the 2. She's a combo guard, as Steph White said. And obviously Steph White knows her. They,
Connecticut, right?
They played together, or they didn't play together.
Played and coached.
White coached her for 2 years in Connecticut. So if anybody knows what Ty Harris can do, it's Stephanie White. So I think what they're aiming to do is, with the depth chart, you have obviously Caitlin Clark, Raven Johnson kind of as her direct backup. And then they would likely have Ty Harris back up Kelsey Mitchell. But then you also have Ty Harris as, a point guard or someone who can come in on defense, or if they want to run specific sets with a defense-heavy backcourt, you have Raven and Ty able to do that. Or if, Stephanie White mentioned playing Caitlin Clark off the ball a little bit, which is something they've been trying to do a lot, dating back to Caitlin's rookie year with Christy Sides. So, and the reasoning for Caitlin Clark playing off the ball is she gets mogged so much when she is on the ball. She is guarded at 94 feet on the ball, and that is very tiring, obviously, for her and really for anyone who's being guarded at 94 feet and double teamed whenever they have the ball in their hands. So the way Stephanie White, thinks of it is, if you have Caitlin Clark off the ball, you can give her, a little bit of in-game on-court rest. So she doesn't have to come out of the game. She can still be on the court, but she's not getting, she's not being double teamed or just face guarded every step she takes. So having Raven Johnson as a primary ball handler in those situations could help, Caitlin get a little bit of rest and play a little bit off the ball while still having an effect on the court. So,
yeah. With that, Chloe, let's go ahead and bring on our friend of the show, Tony East. Tony, we're running on time. This is a miracle, and we're doing it all for you, buddy.
Let's go.
What's up, man?
Hey, guys.
How are you? How was Pacers?
I'm good. I enjoyed listening to that. It's funny because Chloe and I text about these things all the time. So then I get to hear her verbalize the things she's already texted me about. It's great.
Tony, what are your thoughts on Raven Johnson and the depth it gives the Fever?
Yeah, can we tackle all that at once, like the guard depth question? Let's
go for it.
It's been brought up many times.
I typed down stuff I thought we'd get to. So first of all, the history of the number 10 pick. I was surprised at the expectation, I guess I would say. And I think that's reasonable given that every Fever pick the last 10 years has been top 4 or better, basically. And then last year, when it would have been worse, they traded it away. But it's not anyone awesome, right? Ava Sika last year to the sky, Layla Lacan, Zaya Cook, Queen Egbo, Stephanie Watts, Jocelyn Willoughby, Kiara Leslie, Kia Nurse. That's the last decade of number 10 picks. Like,
who's the best out of that group? Like, who's been an impact
Kia Nurse
player?
is the best of that group.
Yeah,
Kia Nurse is very good, but it's not like the expectation should be extremely high for what you get out of the number 10 pick. And I agree with Chloe that I think the fact that Raven Johnson currently could be one of their top 4 guards and projects to be like in the rotation, that's a good fit, right? A pesky defensive guard makes sense next to, presumably her and Harris would not play together very often, but next to one of the other ball dominant guards. I think that does make sense to me personally. So I like you thought that did make sense when they did it, even though a lot of fans seem to disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I think also something I didn't bring up, the Fever had 3 point guards last year, and people were clamoring for Ari McDonald to get signed after her hardship contract. And at that point, it did not matter that she was their 3rd point guard. And really, at the end of the day, all 3 of those point guards got injured. So I think it's a good idea, not to say they're like informing off of injuries from last year, but I think generally it's a good idea. You have 2 true point guards, obviously Caitlin Clark, Raven Johnson, and then you have Ty Harris, who is a point guard. She can also play the 2. She's versatile.
Yep.
So she can be Kelsey Mitchell's primary backup, but also, if someone gets hurt, if someone needs rest or something happens, she can step in at point guard easily.
So let's totalize the guard conversation, because there is a lot of them, right? And it's so zooming out, I think everybody understands now why they at least approached it this way after how many injuries they had last season at the position. And we could get there in a second, but I think it's informative to look at last year's training camp roster, right? Because they had very few guards on the team and training camp last year. They had Jaylen Brown, remember, who they cut before a single game happened. She played in preseason. Caitlin Clark, Sydney Colson, and Kelsey Mitchell. That's kind of it, unless you think of Cunningham or Hull as guards. And they kind of had Sophie handling the ball at times last season out of necessity, not because that was something they hoped or planned to do. So even early in the year, they were kind of searching for ball handling answers. And lo and behold, they bring in Ari when injuries are happening. But they kept having to add Odyssey and others throughout the year, Shea Petty, just to have enough guards. So I think they learned, especially because Colson got hurt, but I think they learned throughout this. Yes, this is very helpful, right? They learned throughout the season they didn't have enough of them. So they were, I think, even like if they had fewer injuries or just Caitlin, they still would have had more. And then when Kelsey has rhabdo in the final game and says on the record, this is because I think of overuse. Like she said that at her ex interview. You have to address that, right? Do they have maybe one guard who's not going to play if Walker Kimbrough makes the team? Yeah, they do. They have a 5th guard who probably will not be playing every night. But then if an injury happens or they need to monitor minutes a little more, they don't have to sign someone that day who doesn't know the plays, and they have to go through all this dance again where they're trying to integrate somebody. So I do understand that they have more than last year, and maybe I understand why people think it's too many, but I totally get why they went about it this way after last season. Like, I mean, Chloe, you were there. How many practices did we go to where our question was like, you have a new player. How are they fitting in? Have they learned anything? Right?
Like 3 weeks straight in August.
Yes.
Like,
it's so challenging to play that way. And to their credit, like all those players stepped up and made their mark. Like Odyssey leaving was like a thing people talked about. Aries was a good player. If she wasn't hurt, I wonder if she'd be back. So I get why they did it. I also understand why it looks like on paper a lot of guards.
Yeah. I also think, it's probably adds on the 2 training camp contracts they have right now, both guards. So right now they're added into what? They have 8 guards going into training camp.
Yeah.
2 of them are on training camp contracts. The likely case is neither of them will make the standard 12-player roster. So you're already down to 6 from that. So I think some of it could be a little injury informed, but also why not do it that way?
Yeah.
Especially with what they had to do last year. And if the same thing happens with forwards this year, that will change. But I think also people are talking about, why is there no backup for Aliyah Boston? I mean, Damiris Dantas is the backup for Aliyah
Perfect.
Boston.
That's my next thing to get to. Chloe, keep going.
You also have, Maisha Hines-Allen can play the 5. Obviously, it's not her standard position, but she can play it if needed. You have Mo Billings, at 4, you have, Michaela Timpson going into her second year as a depth piece. So I don't know if people were just trying to ignore that Damiris Dantas was on the team or if they just didn't think she was good enough. But there is a backup for Aliyah Boston and multiple backups kind of in the same situation as, Ty Harris can back up Kelsey Mitchell or Caitlin Clark. Myisha Haenchen can back up the 4 or the 5. So
I'm intrigued by the front court, certainly. And I'm going to do the same thing I just did for the guards. Like, go back to last year's training camp. So the difference is they had Bonner, who felt like significant and tall at the time. But Mo Billings is taller than Natasha Howard and bigger and the same size as Bonner. And then they have the same backup center in Damiris Dantas. And they added Haenchen, who is not tall, but certainly plays huge. If you've ever watched Myisha Haenchen, she is bruising and in the paint and a huge presence all the time. I at least understand the difference in feeling because of Bonner not being on the team and like going into camp last year, how that felt at least. And obviously Bree Turner is also gone, who didn't play much, but when she figured out her role was like extremely helpful.
Yeah.
So I think the true core feeling for a lot of people is that Dantas just isn't good enough to hold this role. And to their credit, she did struggle last year quite a bit, right? Shot very poorly from 3 and over half her shots were from deep. But 2 years ago, I mean, she survived the expansion draft because she was a great shooter, right? And they believed in this pace and space style that she was almost 40% 2 years ago. That's not to say that last year you should just erase from your brain, but she's kind of a swing fit to me next year of if she gets close, like her career average is closer to 33%. If she's that from 3, she will be totally adequate as their backup 5. But I think the fear what you're saying is if Haenchen is your backup 5 because Dantas isn't cutting it, maybe she's a little undersized. People keep saying, what if Boston gets hurt? And I've seen both sides of this discussion. I think it's funny. If Boston gets hurt, they're screwed anyway. But people have said, well, she's never gotten hurt before. Why should they worry about that? Well, yeah, that's true. But guess what? Before last year, Caitlin Clark had never gotten hurt before. And then she got hurt a ton last year, right? You can't just use the past.
You're going
like
to jinx
that.
it.
So they maybe could have had a little bit better of a backup 5. But if Dantas plays a little better than last year, I don't think. And also, sorry, I'm rambling so much. I never felt last year after they lost Bonner. I very rarely walked out of a game like, dang, they felt too small, right? I'm very surprised how big this has become as a talking point, even if I understand that there are a lot of question mark level players in their front court. I think Billings is good too, though.
Yeah, what do you think? Kalani Brown agreed to a contract buyout with.
Yeah, that was surprising.
What do you think of that potential fit if that's something the Fever would want to pursue?
I've always thought she was pretty good, especially back to her time with Dallas. Do they have a spot for that? Could. They'd probably have to – someone would be very unhappy if they did that probably because someone else would probably have to get cut who expected to make the team. But, yeah, she would be an upgrade, I think, at the backup 5 if she was willing to take that. They're in a weird spot, like if we talked about additions, in that they probably technically can add somebody, but they have to cut one of their training camp, like a veteran who probably thought they'd make the team. And any addition they make now, I think you have to think about how much it cuts into Aliyah Boston's presumably coming raise, right?
Yeah.
If that's something that they're willing to do, because they do have enough space to get her my own cap tracking maybe isn't perfect. It's on the screen. Look at that. They have enough to get her up pretty close to $1 million as is, like as constructed. If they add another player, if they're not on a training camp deal, it would eat into that, right? So the quality of player they're able to add is a factor in that part of this as well.
Yeah, and that's another thing I wanted to talk about the CBA, to my knowledge, still isn't signed. So nobody's been able, or no media members have been able to read the CBA. It's in entirety. But what do you think about, the Fever getting AB, a raise? She probably at this point won't get up to a max. What do you think of that just going on with what they have now?
I find this just a very interesting provision. I get that it's like a bridge between one CBA and the next, really is what it is. But it's like, if you're the Fever, you're like, why am I doing this? You're under contract and you're a restricted free agent next year. Why am I just handing you more money? But if you're Aliyah Boston, you're like, hey, you have the option to hand me more money. Why aren't you doing this? I'm really good, right? So in the end, I think negotiating and having her on more money that isn't quite the max is a logical endpoint for those discussions going both ways. So it does make sense. Like the same thing will happen with Caitlin next year, although that one might be a little easier. Hey, here's all the money you can get. Go play. But Yeah, I like that idea because it would be weird that you just happen to have your salary deflated because you were drafted at a certain time, right? That doesn't make any sense to me, especially if in the case of these two that they're awesome players, right? So I like that provision that they've put in.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that it went into effect immediately.
Me too.
Because, well, I thought it was going to be like the core service requirement that doesn't go into effect until 2027.
Agreed.
Because when it came out that this epic thing was going to happen, it was end of March, and I imagine the Fever had plans like going off of Aliyah Boston's perceived contract for her 4th year, and now that kind of she's eligible for $700,000 more, and I think that really threw a wrench, I would guess, into whatever plans they had, like a month before, 2 weeks before free agency starts. So I think that's probably part of it. And also, Aliyah Boston's the only one eligible this year. Caitlin Clark's the only one eligible next year. It's kind of only affecting the Fever.
That could change next year, though, right? If anyone makes all W this year.
Yeah, like if Angel Reese makes all W this year.
Angel, Paige, something like that. Yeah, that's right.
And Paige is already eligible, but not until her
2 years from now. That's right. Sorry. You're right. Thank you.
Her 4th year rookie contract.
Thank you. That's my fault. That's right. Yeah, so I like that rule conceptually, though. Like, I think that makes good sense. Like, Kalani Brown was fascinating, right? Because last year, everybody was like, whoa, what are you doing? Why'd you sign a 2-year deal? And then she just gets a buyout anyway. So it's all money. Everything that happens in free agency this year is about the money, right? I
would wonder about that. Like, so she signed a 2-year deal. I don't remember what it was for, but
not much.
Obviously, it's under the new $270,000 minimum. If she had stayed with the Mercury, would it have been raised, or would she just have had whatever super minimum contract?
I suspect the league would not allow a contract that's under their mandated minimum.
Yeah.
So my prediction would be that they would say, here's what your percentage of the old cap was.
Mm-hmm.
That's your money this year, something like that, because it would have been stupid to be like, yeah, you're making 6 times less than any other player in the league.
Yeah, you signed for $120,000, and now the new minimum is $270, but you're still going to make $120.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking one for the team. Tony, this is off topic, but what'd you make of the Angel Reese trade? That's kind of the one that's been sending shock waves.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. I mean, look, it says something about the Sky. And to the Sky's credit, I thought that they actually had a good signing period. Like, the players they were able to actually ink 2 contracts were good, but I've not been a fan of any trades they make. And I mean, we saw Beck Allen on that interview, right? She said did not mince words. This was not like a soft, yeah, it wasn't very fun for me there. Like, she hated it. The experience, the facilities, and everything. And they have had a rough run since their title with Candace, right? So you hear a lot about what it's like there. You wonder if the new investments will help, and clearly they're getting players now, and it's still Chicago, Illinois. But I'm rambling too much to say. Like, yeah, if it's a bad organizational fit for a player, and there's endless questions about the fit of Angel and Cardozo, I'm sorry, I said the wrong name. Like, you at least explore what the market is for those players, and if you can get the it always sounds weird because in other leagues you can trade endless picks. In the W, you can only trade 2. So it sounds small, but like in theory, they got the most that they could. I probably wouldn't have wanted to trade Angel Reese, but if that's what it comes to, I guess, and she didn't want to be there. I don't know that. I'm just assuming based on comments about the Sky. I suppose I get why it happened. I think it's great for the Dream. That is, sorry, to go back to something we talked about. To me, if the Fever being smaller, the fear is that the Dream and the Liberty are now huge. Like, those 2 teams are way bigger, and this trade is one of the reasons that that's the case.
Yeah, the Liberty are basically going to have Satu Sabli playing the 2 essentially.
Oh, you didn't even say the player that I think makes it all work for them. But Nigelani was reserved and got nothing. They're loaded. It's insane.
Yeah, I think kind of on the topic of reserved contracts, I know a lot of people were wondering why Ray Burrell signed with the Sparks on technically a training camp contract, but the minimum. But she really just did not have a choice.
Did you see her Instagram story about the matter?
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's the thing about reserved contracts. I think it's 0 to 3 years of service. Yep. You get reserved. you can only negotiate with the team that reserved you or the team you were on last year. And they can just say, we're going to give you a minimum, non-guaranteed, and you don't have a choice, you know?
Right, like restricted, like Lexie Hall. She could have signed another offer, like Shakira Austin did. You can sign something else with another team, and even if you go back to your old team, you get that money. As a reserve player, you can't even do that first step, right? You have to, and so you're really locked into the money. And it's all timing, right? If the Fever knew that the cap was going to jump up umptillion times, they would have been like, yeah, let's stack our team with the best possible players. But it's also a huge risk. 0 to 3 year players can stink. Sometimes you just never know the value you're going to get out of that. So it's hard to plan for it, but clearly some teams massively benefited from it.
And something I've seen a lot too, kind of on the topic of restricted free agents, and someone just asked in the chat of, do we think Lexie got a huge offer from another team? The thing of, if Lexie got a huge offer from another team that, you know, she legitimately wanted, it would have been the same situation as what happened with Shakira Austin, where it would be known that Lexie Hull signed an offer sheet with another team. And in that situation is the only situation where the Fever would have had to legitimately match. So I don't doubt that, you know, Lexie Hull negotiated with other teams, maybe went back to the Fever and was like, hey, this is what I'm hearing from teams across the league. But she never signed an offer sheet with another team. So technically, we don't know how much these teams offered her. Like, another team could have offered her $1 million, and she could have just said, I want to go back to the Fever for $750 or $765 is what she signed for. Because, you know, she's talked a lot about how much she enjoys being in Indianapolis. Obviously, her fiance works downtown. They bought a house. You know, she feels very settled here. And I think that, you know, informed how she went through free agency, where she didn't necessarily probably want to sign an offer sheet because she didn't want to price herself out of the Fever necessarily.
I'll say this from covering the W and other leagues too that have restricted free agency. It's like, if you want to stay, sometimes you don't even want it out that you sign somewhere else. Like, now it's a thing for the Mystics for years that Shakira Austin tried to sign with another team, right? Even if she is still on their team. And that's a huge contract for a team that has Shakira Austin, Kiki Ariafin, and Lauren Betts now, right? So that's very interesting to me. But if you're Lexie Hall and you want to stay with the Fever and you go, hey, I got offered this much from this team, but you don't want to do that. You don't want it out there like, oh, Lexie Hall signs with XYZ. I'm not even saying that this happened, but the Fever like, great, here it is. And then she signs with the Fever anyway. And it's, you know, it's just, if you want to stay, restricted free agency is very easy. you just figure it out. And Lexie's a great fit with their team. So, and great friends with their best player. So that helps.
Yeah.
We'll get to some Q&As here. I'm starring some comments that we'll get to here in a little bit of the show, so make sure you continue firing those off in the live chat. Tony and Chloe, both of you guys, we'll start broadly, then we can drill into some specific things. Training camp starts Sunday. What's kind of your biggest thing, top of the watch list of what you want to know and what you're excited to learn about with this team over the next couple weeks? Tony, why don't you start us off?
Well, one is generally Kelsey Mitchell's health. I mean, I know that she played in the offseason, but I mean, the way overuse sounds like, do they have any change of plans for how this works? Because part of her answer about that was she's never played that long into a season. Okay, that's reasonable as an answer, but guess what? That's what you hope to do as a team this year as the Fever, right? You're hoping you play that long if you have 3 top 10, 15, whatever number of players on your team. So how do they plan to manage that? How does their guard signings fit in to all of that? And then just generally rotational things, right? Is there any surprises? How does the backup guard positions plan to work? Because it seems like on paper we know, but you never really know. Do they want to go small and spread it out and play fast? We know they want to play fast, but how much does shooting versus defense versus rebounding play into their decision makings there?
Yeah, I guess something I'm looking for. It's a good question about Kelsey Mitchell too, and I think that also plays into what Steph White said on draft night about Raven Johnson. Like, they want to make sure Kelsey gets some rest, or like, obviously not rest where she's sitting out full games, but like, they don't want her to play 40 minutes a game every single game to the point where she gets rhabdo. So that's what played into the depth with Raven Johnson with Ty Harris. So I am interested to see how the guard depth plays out, as you mentioned, with, obviously Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, very offensive-driven guards. Raven Johnson, Ty Harris can kind of pick up the slack there on defense, but then they're not the best offensive guards. So I'm interested to see how that dynamic plays out. And this might be more when getting into the season, like how those rotations play out and at what time are they going to prioritize offense versus defense on the court, and how will that play into everything. Just going through training camp and through their 3 preseason games and then into the season.
Do you have any, Brian?
No, I think you guys covered it all. That's a lot of preseason games too. It feels like a lot.
I can't remember if anyone else has 3 or if it's just the Fever.
This is my first year covering them. They've had 3, I think.
Didn't they have 3 last year?
They had 3 last year. Sorry, this is my second year covering the Fever. But they added, so both times they've had 3, they've had 2, and then they schedule this international team game as a third later. So that's the third.
Yeah.
It will be interesting too to study. And this is probably a preseason game thing, but the combinations and how much of they just kind of jumble in and the mixing and matching, and how early on we're kind of able to lock in on the combinations that they really like, and just how quickly they gel. And how that goes into, determining how many of those 8 stick around and which of the 8 obviously stick around.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. This isn't necessarily training camp, but just how the development players are going to work, like when it comes to games. And I think it's going to be really interesting because from what, obviously, as I've said, we don't know the full CBA, but there have been reports that, development players can be signed kind of like an NFL practice squad. They can kind of be picked up off of a development squad and signed to another team's active roster. So I would be interested to see how that works out kind of in season if someone gets picked up off of developmental squad.
That will be interesting to me as well. Or does it work like an NBA 2-way where you can like be converted if you reach your games limit and stuff like that? That's my suspicion, is that if you are active for 12 games, you can't be active anymore, but you can just have your deal become a standard deal, but somebody would have to be cut to make that happen, right? Is what I assume it will be. I don't know. And here's the thing. Nobody knows. I've got so many questions about it. Like I literally, it's not that I am not informed enough to answer you. It's that I literally can't. Like the rules do not exist. They're not written down and signed as league rules yet. It's very challenging to talk about them.
My understanding is they can be activated to the developmental roster at any time, or activated from the developmental roster to the standard roster at any time. And I would assume that
if there's a roster spot.
Yeah, if there's a roster spot.
Yes, agreed.
I would assume that also means once they've played 12 games, if they want to, bring them onto the standard roster, then they could do that after the 12 games. But obviously you need a roster spot for that. You need to cut somebody.
Yep. So
there's a lot of dynamics that go through that.
That's why the unprotected deals they sign are so important, right? If like, let's pretend Justine Pissot's awesome in preseason and they play her 12 games, like crap, we need her to play. Okay, great. You have to do something no fun and waive somebody, but it's great that you have options to actually do that if she works out. And this is a good way to do it. And I imagine every developmental player is going to be like, you're not active unless the team is very hurt and they need you to play. But that's better, right? You have someone on your team who's been in practices, who knows how to play. It's not like you're signing somebody off the street who doesn't know your plays. It's better for the product of the games. Like it just makes too much sense to have it be this way. So I'm all about them, and I'm looking forward to actually learning how they work.
Let's see here. Chloe, is there anything else you wanted to get to before we throw it over to some Q&A? Sorry, I dropped that in the chat right as Tony was wrapping up.
I don't think so.
All right, let's.
Can I say one more thing? Am I allowed?
Yeah, buddy, you take it away.
No, it'll only be like 20 seconds. I'm actually surprised that the focus of ire of the free agency period is on guards and centers, when to me, the thing that I feel like they're missing the most is wing depth. They only have 2. I'm very surprised that that's not a bigger conversation. It's just Hall and Cunningham, and that's it. And they lost Sophie last year, and they were like playing guards at the 3 all year. So I'm surprised that's not more of a discussion. That's the end of my free agency thoughts.
No, my thought on that is so Justine Pissot, she's kind of a wing. I mean, I agree. 6'4" guard, which is kind of crazy. But Obviously, they assigned her to the player development pool, which means they could hypothetically, in a injury, I think, obviously, once again, we haven't seen the CBA, but there have been talks about, roster spot exceptions for injured players. So in that situation, they could hypothetically activate Pissot off of the developmental squad in the case of a potential injury, but
All right, let's dive into actually the wing question. Is there somebody out there that they didn't sign, didn't draft that you thought would have made sense? I had that on my list and just
so many good players. As a lifelong Nia Coffey and Beck Allen fan, yeah, I think they would have fit well. The problem with this kind of situation is they don't have minutes to offer, right? Their wing rotation as it stands is occupied by Hall and Cunningham. So if you go to Rebecca Allen, who's good, or Nia Coffey, who is good, and say, hey, we'd love to have you on our team, you're not going to play. Like, they're going to be like, no, I'm not coming to your team. So it's hard to get someone who actually would matter and would take that deal in free agency, right? So the answer to the question you asked me is not really. There's not anybody I feel like they should have gotten that would actually play for them. But I did wonder if their 11th spot would be at least like a hypothetical, this person can play the 3 kind of player.
You probably don't have the roster depth to draft somebody, a project type player that you can give time to learn and back up the other 2 learn from them. Kind of puts you in a bind.
It needs to be somebody who can play in a pinch, but is also maybe not required to play every night.
Yeah, it's a real pickle, Chloe. Let's do some Q&A. I know this is Chloe's favorite part of the show. We're going to start off with a nice and easy one. There's 22 days left in the season, which is crazy with how quick.
There's how many days until their first game? 8 days until their first preseason game.
8.
Shit. Tony, how did you survive Pacers, by the way?
I mean, I have time between seasons for the first time in 2 years, which is kind of nice. Yeah, it was way different going. I mean, it'll be fun to see the Fever be a good team again. I'll say that. Like, it just gets mundane. And I went through thankfully, I went through years of Fever seasons where they won like a combined 11 games in 2 years. So I've covered not very good teams before.
You had the excitingness of them playing in a barn.
I don't even want to think about it.
You survived the what was it? The inflatable house days.
Oh,
I remember that when I first moved to Indy. When there was
I was gonna say you were at some of those games, I believe. Yeah,
I was there as a fan.
Like there's a WNBA game going on, and there are just kids like screaming and playing carnival rides, like not in the arena, like court level, like right there,
mere feet away. Yeah, just one of those little ticker tape things separating them from the field of play. It was crazy time.
The year they got Aliyah, and they were still doing that for a little bit. I was like, this is the best for your money sporting event in Indy. You can get, because they had the deal where it was like $15 for a seat, a meal, and a hat. And they weren't good, but they were like watchable that year. I was like, everybody should come to this. This is awesome. And now it's expensive and full, and there's no bounce house.
You can kind of
don't get a bounce house anymore, geez.
Chloe misses the bounce house.
I saw many a player after shoot-arounds take a nice trip down the slide because no one else was in the arena, which was a good time.
Oh, that's awesome. And you can kind of feel the buzz. Speaking of Aliyah Boston, when she was drafted, you kind of feel the buzz. Like, I remember covering that draft party, that watch party. You kind of feel it build a little bit because it's like, this is special. This is start something big. Obviously, didn't see what was coming, but
they kept losing the lottery. Like, they kept getting one pick behind what would have been like a special player, right? They had, like, Melissa Smith was good. They had some good players on the team, but that was the first time they won it, and there was like questions if she would go pro, and she did. It was like, okay, finally. Like, they've been bad for so long. They're going to have 2 very good players on their team, and now they have 3, obviously.
Let's see. Just saw the Justine Pissot news. Do you guys know the rules if we want to eventually sign her to a full contract, or if another team wants to offer a full contract? So I think that goes back to the training camp developmental.
I can purely speculate on the last part. She's under contract with the Fever, so the answer would be no. No team can just sign her now. And that's why you draft someone like this, because you have their rights. No one else can just take them from you. So, no, she's on the Fever. That'd be a great loophole.
That would be wild. This is more speculative. If either of you heard anything about TV schedule finalized, or at least what people should be looking for in terms of the balance of games, I suppose it's probably going to be a lot more national games than locally televised ones with this team.
I don't know.
Okay.
National set already, right?
Is it? I don't know.
I'll look at that while I leave you guys.
Also, FanDuel's gone, so
we'll see.
I heard Chloe's going to live stream them on Facebook. I'll give everybody your personal page here. After
they used to live stream them on Facebook.
They did.
Listen, Major League Baseball wasn't above Facebook games either. So
for years they were on Facebook with a live chat of the fans watching the game, like right next to the game. It was crazy.
That must have. Could you imagine that today?
I am glad that is gone.
Oh my God. So if Raven was picked up, this is a question I've seen a lot in the mentions, but so if Raven Johnson was picked as the point guard backup, then why did the Fever sign Ty Harris? Chloe, I'll let you start on this one.
Well, I think that was something we talked about at the beginning of, the Fever carried 3 point guards last year. Nobody cared that the Fever carried 3 point guards last year. Everyone was clamoring for Aaron McDonald last year. But I think Ty Harris, originally when she was signed, we thought she was going to be the backup for Caitlin Clark. Seems now she's going to be the backup for Kelsey Mitchell because Ty Harris can play the 1 and the 2. She's a combo guard. So Raven Johnson is going to be the primary backup for Caitlin. Ty Harris is going to be the primary backup for Kelsey Mitchell. But then Ty Harris can also play point guard because I think if you want a lot of depth at any position, it's going to be point guard, especially considering the Fever had injuries to all 3 of their top point guards last year, then obviously had to bring in Odyssey Sims, and she had to play a game on 1 practice and 1 shoot around. So I think that was why they signed Ty, because she's versatile.
And you remember the 2024 Fever Sun series, Chloe. Ty Harris was not the 1. She was the 2 playing next to Burton, right? I've already seen her do that role for Stephanie White, by the way, in the past. Carrington was on that team. They had one other guard. I can't remember who it was. She was like, the way she plays, one, when your primary focus is defense, it doesn't matter which guard position you are, air quotes, right? Like the other guard can handle the ball. If it's Raven and Harris together, yeah, I might be a little confused. But if it's Mitchell and Harris or Clark and Harris, it's very obvious which guard is supposed to do what things. Like they are both very interchangeable. And that's good. And guess what? Raven Johnson, as we said at the beginning, doesn't have to play this year. They can actually just develop their draft pick naturally over a few years, and then she could be Harris in the future.
I won't engage in the toxic comments that are floating around in my mind that I've been seeing all week. I'm just going to move us on. I want to say it snarkily and sarcastically, but I won't. I won't open that door. With Kelsey Mitchell on a 1-year deal, how confident are you that this current core can stay together long term, and maintaining that group require players to take less than max contracts? That's a really interesting thing to look ahead to. I know you don't want to get too far ahead from the present, but Chloe, I know this is something that you've been talking about a lot behind the scenes, so I'll let you start, and then Tony, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, just on the long term of this core group and the possibility of keeping them together.
I mean, I think the reason Kelsey Mitchell is on a 1-year deal is for the financial flexibility in the future, and that was something The Athletic did winners and losers. One of the winners was Fever financial flexibility. But obviously going into 2027, Aliyah Boston is going to command a max. Caitlin Clark is going to be eligible for the Epic contract, extension where she would also likely command a max. And then Kelsey Mitchell is going to want, if not the Supermax, somewhere close to the max. So I think maintaining the 3 of them would likely, have one person at least maybe take some kind of cut. Whether they're willing to do that is a different conversation.
This is actually a kind of complicated conversation too, because we don't know about the revenue growth answers yet. That's actually something agents had questions about, right? We saw Asia Wilson sign a contract that was reported as 3 years, $5 million, but that requires a certain level of raises that are not technically guaranteed, right? I don't know exactly how that is projected to work in the league. 20% raises. Are we sure that's going to happen every single year? Everybody, maybe. The answer is maybe. So a lot of max players took flat deals or static 5% raise or whatever, which is you can bake that in. So it's hard to project what max salaries are even going to be. But I thought, like you said, and like The Athletic said with their flexibility, that a 1-year deal for Mitchell and the Fever made the most sense because of this, right? They basically, and we'll see what their numbers shake out at in future seasons, they basically have 1 or 2 shots at actually having money to spend with Clark and Boston on the team. And if Kelsey Mitchell's a top name your number player, like I said, if that's the player you want to use that space on, great. She fits very well. She's very good. If there's someone else maybe better than her that you'd like to chance at, it's like not now or never necessarily, but it helps now to do it early when you have the money, and then everybody gets in 2 years from now when Boston and Clark are guaranteed to be on max/supermax deals. Yeah, you have less wiggle room to do things like that and be creative. So yeah, I think the shorter deal made sense to me. And if they wanted to add a fourth player, a la the Liberty, then somebody's going to have to take quite the haircut. Yes. But for the three of them, I think it's possible they could all pretty reasonably stay together the next few years. But you are very limited in what your depth can be, as fans have had problems with, right? They don't like the size. I don't think they have enough wings, right? Okay, that's a trade-off of having three very, very, very good players in your starting lineup.
It's a question I should have brought up earlier just when we were on the topic of epics, but whichever one of you wants to take it, just explain the concept of the epic deal and how that works, the mechanics and all that stuff.
Tony's the cap master.
Well, I would say this question I think it could be finalized. It says not being finalized. It still totally could be. In fact, the way epic kind of works is it seems like it would be the last thing you do. Like you explain to your player, here's how we're going to build our team. Whatever space we have left, you can have it as your raise, basically. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, but I still maybe not expect, but I still would. The odds-on favorite would be that Aliyah Boston does get an epic extension, but the offer may not be able to be concretely made until the Fever know, okay, here's how much money we're going to have left now that our roster is basically done heading into the year.
Tony West, shout out. We'd love to see it. Couldn't
type that one up for 10 minutes.
Do you know why they didn't re-sign Natasha Howard? $700,000 seems doable. Chloe?
I mean, it might be just one of those things. Natasha Howard obviously signed a 2-year deal with the Lynx, and the Fever, as we've discussed with just, maybe potentially retaining Aliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell into 2027, they probably just wanted, a financial flexibility going into 2027. So they, signed a lot of 1-year deals. They obviously gave Mo Billings, Lexie Hull 2-year deals, but everyone else who's not on a rookie, or Damiris Dantas as well, but she's on a minimum. But, Monique Billings and Lexie Hull are the only 2 players not on major-ish contracts that are signed in 2027. And I think it's just one of those things where they wanted the flexibility, and maybe they didn't want to sign too many multi-year deals, is my thought on it.
Well, look, we could do the basketball discussion too. I'm mostly speculating at this part, but I mean, Howard is a good player who played meaningful 20-plus minutes at almost every playoff game. She's not bad, but how many games was it very clear that Stephanie White was like, we need something else with the 4 right now? Like Brianna Turner, they were like, we need a defender now. Go play, right? All the time. So it's not even necessarily that I think Natasha Howard is bad, but I think that because she doesn't shoot very much or very well from 3, and they felt like there were some defensive weaknesses there. She is a good rebounder. She was the MVP of their biggest win of the season. That was very cool, to be clear. I think they probably felt like they could use that money on a player who either is better or fits better. And then if you're playing $700K for a backup 4, I would not think that is a good use of your resources. So this just purely based on how her season went in terms of her minutes sort of changing, especially in the bigger games, which guess what? Again, like I said, with Mitchell and playing a long season, they would like to be playing in those bigger games again this season. That I would presume was a factor as well.
Let's see here. Why do you think they chose to sign Howard Allen instead of Turner? Whoever wants to take that one first, let you have it.
That's a good one. They're different. They're very different. Turner didn't play hardly at all for a long time, but then was super important in those late playoff games, kind of like the opposite season that Howard had. I think Turner coming back would have been logical. And she got Chloe, you can correct me if I'm wrong. She got a training camp deal with Vegas, right? So easily affordable or doable. Yeah. So I would presume this is just who they felt was a better fit, but also something. This is, again, maybe not relevant at all. Maybe they did or did not want Turner back, but unrestricted free agency is a 2-way street. It's possible that Turner was like, yeah, I would rather go to Vegas, right? So I don't know that it was a choice. Turner signed first of the 2, but they're roughly equivalent level players to me. They're just very different. So I don't know that I don't know that they chose one or the other, but they're just different. I have no real insight into that.
Turner was like buried on the bench until that UConn game when she came out of nowhere. The game when Cunningham tore her ACL, right?
Yes, she was amazing.
Yeah.
I love that you said UConn for
Did I
Connecticut.
say UConn? Oh my god,
Yeah.
Connecticut.
We have to honor the Sun this year. It's
I
their
know.
last year as a franchise. They deserve our utmost respect.
I don't appreciate Chloe, by the way. She makes light of that. Like she's like celebrating and dancing on the Sun's grave.
I'm not.
Everybody just doesn't want the hour drive from the airport.
Yeah.
I thought it was wonderful.
We
The
do
Connecticut
like the
Sun
Sun.
are the
I'm very
worst
sad
team.
for the people of New England.
Chloe's not.
It is
Throwing me under the bus. Jeez.
it is selfishly easier to get to Houston than Connecticut.
It is.
But I am very sad for fans of the Sun.
To be clear, that was a joke. Chloe was also devastated, just not as devastated as me, because I really enjoyed that trip to Connecticut. I thought it was great, wonderful, and Chloe didn't, but it's fine. Anyway, Chloe, did you have any thoughts on the Bree Turner thing before I move us on? I'm
No,
sorry.
I did not.
Okay, I'm sorry for throwing you under the bus like that.
Jeez.
Can we get some explanation on how exactly the developmental player process works?
We can get an explanation when the CBA is signed.
No, I don't think another team can swipe her. Great that she's a fan favorite. 12 active games. Then she has to be converted to a standard. We need like a default, like pre-recorded answer for this one, I think.
The thing is, so if I'd imagine if they get to 12 active games, like, can they just stay on the developmental squad and just not be activated for the rest of the season?
I would think so.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But then why would you have them if they can't be activated? But that's all.
Well, the situation where that would happen is like you're super hurt early in the year, but you love the player, so you have to play them, and then you run out of games, but you still want them around because they're good, right? So that would stink, but they can still practice and be a part of things, so it's not used.
With the influx of guards, is there organizational intention to shift Caitlin Clark into more of a – we kind of answered this one already at the top of the show, so we'll scroll back and listen to that one. Any players you guys have eyes on that could be cut from another team that the Fever could scoop up for wing/center depth? I have eyes on me here from Golden State. Chloe?
I mean, we discussed Kalani Brown earlier, obviously, and then I think to what Tony's point was if you sign another wing center, you're going to cut a veteran that you signed that they probably think they're going to make the team. So it's there could be, I think, obviously Kalani Brown. I mean, Kalani Brown also could have agreed to a contract buyout just to get a raise from the Mercury. Who knows what's going on with that? But also she was not too utilized in Phoenix last year, but that's beside the point. But I mean, obviously Kalani Brown's the one I think of.
The Mercury have like a million players. Also, they had
so like many going into training camp.
It's insane. Usually also, to speak on Brown's specific situation, this happened with Katie Lou Samuelson, right? Usually when a player's bought out, their new team is already, they know where they're going and how they're making up the money, or else they would not have taken a deal in which they lose money, right? That's like just human logic. So maybe it's the Fever, maybe it's not. And also to really put a bow on this, one, to answer this question specifically, I'll admit a knowledge gap for me. I have not studied every team's center rotation and who's non-guaranteed, so I don't actually know a good answer to the question. But to like actually round out our own answer, if they had to cut someone to bring another center, I think we can all assume it would be one of Walker Kimbrough or Dantas to get a better center in the door.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. I just thought this was some good insight. If Stephanie White unlocks off-ball Caitlin Clark, the Fever are winning it all this year. You need multiple ways to beat opponents and adjust to matchups for the playoffs. And I think that's something that's kind of lost, it seems like, with just social media. What isn't lost, but just the versatility aspect of this and the way that allows you to move things around.
And that was my thought too. Like everyone's focusing on, the question that we didn't really answer. It's like, is there an organizational push to get Caitlin off the ball? No, there's not. They just want her to be more versatile. Being able to play off the ball will unlock a lot of different things, as this person says, that can make obviously the lineups more versatile. It can make obviously Caitlin more dangerous as a player. But I don't think there is an organizational push to, get Caitlin off the ball and make her bad at playing basketball. I think they're just trying to have versatility in lineups.
Yeah, if you asked every single person who plays Works attends Fever games. They all know Caitlin's better on the ball, guys. I promise. I promise they know that. They also have Kelsey Mitchell, who's better with the ball in her hands, and Aliyah Boston, who, guess what, is also better with the ball in her hands. They have to make that all planned. And if I'm not saying they should shift usage away from Caitlin Clark, she's their best player, but finding the best way to juggle all those players and keep everybody fresh and healthy and make the offense as good as possible is the objective of a team. Making your offense as efficient as possible is a never-ending goal for a WNBA team. If there is ever a time that Caitlin Clark coming up from the corner without the ball and coming off a screen and shooting one of those crossbody threes that she makes, presumably every single one of it feels like, if that's a good way to get Kelsey Mitchell the ball sometimes and get Clark open, great. You should do that. You should absolutely do that.
Let's see here. Tony West, why do you have to be so logical and make me feel like just an emotional fan?
I thought that worked well with,
I did too.
You know what's funny is I do kind of feel bad sometimes when I my topics for today are preying on fans that I think are being too emotional with my own answers to this. That's a funny answer. I don't know. I unfortunately have used too much brain space thinking about the professional basketball teams in Indiana. But hey, I'll give you this. We're doing this live show and we're talking to fans because of people like you who are emotional and care about the Indiana Fever. So thank you very much for being an emotional fan.
That is wonderful. Has Aliyah Boston recovered from her injury? This is a big topic of conversation and one that we should probably at least talk about and speculate on. Chloe, I'll let you start.
Yeah, I mean, Amber Cox was asked on Monday. She said AB is ready to go, which, we didn't have time to, follow up on if that means she'll be 100% because we were talking to her in the middle of the 25 and the 40 draft pick, I believe. So she was on a tight timeline, and that was the last question before that she was whisked away back to the draft room. So according to Amber Cox, she's ready to go. I would think that means, she's ready to go.
I saw her and ironically, a players on the team, Erin McDonald, at a Pacers game this year. And this was maybe the scene just felt heavier because one of the players was in a boot, but the player in a boot was Erin McDonald. Aliyah Boston was walking fine in completely normal attire. So my suspicion at that time was that she was probably going to be okay to go. But I did not walk up to her and say, hey, are you healthy? So I can only go like Chloe off of what Amber Cox said Monday.
That would have been great if you walked up to her and in that voice.
I should have done it. They were like 2 feet away from me. The New York Liberty just announced in one press release the re-signing of Jonquel Sabrina and Brianna Stewart. Is that the best press release in WNBA history? That's crazy. That's unbelievable.
Oh, my goodness. Chloe, anything else? Tony, anything else you want to get to? I feel like, Tony, this is the start of a wonderful season with you on the show. I love having you on.
You didn't do your last starred question.
I don't even remember.
Me?
Oh, was it really a barn?
Oh,
you could take this in any direction you'd like.
That is funny, Sam. Good question.
Well,
Kind of, actually. So the arena is called Indiana. It's not anymore, right? It has a new sponsor.
It's like Cortiva Coliseum.
Yeah,
now.
it's called Cortiva Coliseum now. But at the time, it was sponsored by Farm Bureau Insurance. So it was Indiana Farmers Coliseum. It was not actually a barn, but I say kind of because it was at the state fairgrounds. And so the surrounding buildings were like a cow printed place where they sell milkshakes at the state fair, and this big actual barn where they house like sheep and cow and pigs. So it's not actually a barn, but it was close. Like players who called it that were not being that far fetched.
Well, I went to the state fair. I don't remember I think it was 2 years ago now. I went to the state fair and it was raining. So we went inside of the Farmers Coliseum and they were doing like a horse show.
Amazing.
With dirt on the ground and everything. And I was like, wow, the Fever played here.
And the buildings that are named around it are called like the agriculture building and the horticulture. It's like, what? Where are we? It was fine. Like it's a fine basketball arena. They play. I should know this. One of the Division I teams in Indy plays college games there.
Is it Ooey Pooey? Is it IU?
I should know that. I think you're right. Yeah. Nah, I don't know.
Well, Ooey Pooey doesn't exist anymore. It's IU Indy now.
A major program plays there. Like it's a real arena. It's just it's not a cake and a Fever game. Yes, but it was a good time. It actually fit at the time the fan base size better than Gamebridge did. But now that obviously is not the case.
Yeah, Chloe, most of their games already on the road have been moved to the bigger arenas in town, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I think they're playing. No, both of the games in Atlanta have been moved, I believe.
I think the only ones that haven't are Mystics because Capital One's under construction too, though, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe so. hopefully they don't move it to Baltimore at this point because I already booked travel to DC.
That is the most unique place you and I have ever run into each other, though. Is definitely Baltimore, Maryland for WNBA game.
I thought I was going to jinx myself by booking the flight out that night, and then they started having shot clock issues, and then the game had to be a little bit delayed. And I was like, I'm not going to make my flight out at 9 p.m. because
And then you and I were waiting for a player that I will not throw under the bus for a long time after the game. And we're like, okay, didn't they clinch a playoff spot that night? Is that what it was?
I think so. Or they clinched like the number 6 seed. They clinched something out.
We wanted to talk to a player who'd been for the team a while about it. And I felt bad being like, I can't laugh at Chloe for being stressed. That's mean. But it was bringing me at least a small amount of joy.
The great thing about Atlanta's home arena is that it is literally on the SkyTrain to the airport. Like, there have been multiple times where they've played at Atlanta's home arena, and I have a flight out that night, and I just walk to the SkyTrain. I go one stop at the airport.
That's nice. So, that's great.
Yeah. Reminder to ring that or to subscribe to the channel. We've jumped up a lot during this show. I think 45. So keep plugging away and keep subscribing, because that's how we keep this thing on the air. Here's a perfect closer for today. Question for Chloe's Corner Q&A, which is a new thing that we should probably get sponsored.
Yeah.
Chloe, have you listened to Olivia Rodrigo's new single?
I have not. I didn't know she released a single, honestly. I watched the finale of The Pit last night.
Wonderful show.
So also, there's a new The Summer I Turned Pretty-esque show coming out in June. Very exciting. It's based off of the book called Every Summer After, a book that I did read even before they announced the show. And I saw they announced the show and I was like, wait, I know this plot.
Wow, what a timely question. Today. Drop Dead came out today.
No. How are you not on this, Peterson?
I don't know. I'll listen to it and then I'll get back to you at our next show.
Anything else?
We have another live show coming at 1:15 after.
No more going to get off air and Chloe's going to be like, we're doing it again. Oh my gosh. Chloe, anything else you want to get to? I know you and I are planning to be back on Sunday for a training camp show. We'll have video and coverage of that. We're finalizing a rotation of shows. We'll have training camp coverage. Chloe will be at all the preseason games. Tony, anything? Go ahead, Chloe.
We're hoping to have a solid rotation of shows on specific days, but it is difficult because the games are not on specific days. So we'll see how well we do with the rotation.
You're going to New York for the first preseason game?
Yep.
If you're still listening, people, that is the most dedication you're going to get. That's sick. That's awesome.
It really is something else. Tony, anything else that you want to plug, buddy? Anything that you got going on, life, professionally? Any stories you want to share? Things
Subscribe
you're
to Tony's Substack.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about the Substack.
I will be doing actual game stories this year, which is not something anybody asked me to do last year, which I am excited about. I know less people care about game stories than like drama and other stories, but I like writing those, dang it. So you're going to get them.
Hell yeah. Where can people find those, by the way? Let's plug it all the way, buddy.
Sure. I started a website called CircleCitySpin.com covering pro basketball in Indiana. So lots of Fever stories coming your way, including I'm working on free agency stuff today, just for funsies.
Fantastic, buddy. Chloe, anything story-wise you're going to have coming, or is it just training camp all the way?
Training camp. I talked to Ty Harris yesterday, so story will be coming on that.
Very nice.
Tony, have you talked to her before? Sorry, Chloe, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Have I?
Sorry, Chloe, again. But have you?
I have not. No, why?
She's wonderful. Because her sister played ball at Fisher's High School in town, so I did a story on the two of them and just kind of how Ty.
Did her family move from Noblesville to Fisher's in between their high school experiences?
I suppose so, yeah. Talia's awesome. Ty is hilarious, as Chloe got to experience yesterday. Like, she is a fun human to talk to.
Yes, she wanted. I confirmed with her that she's cleared to play, and she said, "Tell everyone I'm cleared to play. I've seen stuff on Twitter. Tell everyone I can play." So, for the masses, Ty Harris is cleared to play.
Ty is instant offense, Tony. I cannot wait. It's great. Go ahead, Chloe. I apologize for interrupting. I just felt the need.
Sam asked when's that come out? Saturday or Sunday?
Okay.
So.
All right, good stuff. Well, good talk, Chloe. Good talk, Tony. Thank you guys so much for watching with us. Again, make sure that you subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff. And Chloe and I will be back with you on Sunday afternoon following training camp. Bye.